Hi, 8th grade. Happy Monday. Hope you had a fantastic weekend and real good to your moms over the break. Welcome back, and we are going into now the final unit of 8th grade. Dun, dun, dun. Today we're going to begin our analyzing of the origins and key figures and foundational ideologies of the two major political parties of the United States. And once again, this is a quick introduction. We're taking a whole unit exploring this. There's a whole course called Political Science when you're in college where you can really go into a lot of these ideas in depth. But this is just a general explanation of where both sides are coming from. To kind of give you a foundation as we're building up and exploring the issues over the course of the next couple weeks. So, when we look here, we see the political ideology spectrum. When we look at a spectrum, it's a range. Just like you see, there's a spectrum of light and the range of light that's visible, and there's some on the far ends that we can't see on either side. And there's spectrums in many different ways when we're talking about culture and government and so on and so forth, learning, lifestyles. When you're talking about when there's a range of different types of people, or things, we use that term spectrum to describe it. So when we're talking about political beliefs, this spectrum of belief is often referred to as the left-right spectrum. That if you are more left-leaning in your beliefs, you're more on this side. If you are more right-leaning in your beliefs, you're more on this side. You might notice that this has blue and this has red. And that comes into play with in the U.S. political system where we use blue on the Electoral College map to show states that the Democratic Party won, and red to show states that the Republican Party won. In the middle here, we see people who are moderate, who are independent. You might recall the term from 7th grade, a fence sitter. They can kind of see both sides. They don't necessarily swing one way or another. And if we look at the politics in the United States, yes, 50% and is steered by the Democratic Party, 50% is steered by the Republican Party. I know third-party candidates also have probably a bit more of a dip into that 50% number. But anyway, really, more than a third of the people living in the country are more in this area, are moderate, have voted Democratic, have voted Republican in different elections. They can kind of see multiple ways on both sides. So you don't have to consider the choice in the American political system to be left or right. It's just kind of figuring out where on the spectrum you lie more. Am I more left? Am I more right? Am I right in the middle? Am I far right? Am I far left? So this is going to be kind of an exploration for you to kind of try to figure out where you would stand on that. If you look right now, you can see that the modern Republican Party, conservatism, their main ideology, the modern Democratic Party, liberalism, are pretty close to that moderate range. But we see on both sides, it definitely pushes towards more far end on the political spectrum beliefs. On the Democratic side, we hear more pushes for socialism and socialistic programs. On the conservative side, we definitely hear more calls for libertarianism, for restricting the government more and more and more. So it's there's definitely a pull on both sides from the people who are more left or more right to try to pull their party one way or another. And it's that constant struggle between both of them of trying to figure out where is that middle ground. So let's kind of look at both of them first. I'm going to start with the Democratic Party because alphabetically they start first. So the Democratic Party is typically described as having a liberal ideology. And the kind of give a very quick explanation of liberalism is that they believe that the government's a powerful instrument, a powerful tool, and that the power of government should be used to try to improve the lives of its people, to make a strong government that's capable of serving its people best, of protecting its people best. We see many other terms besides liberal or Democrats for people who take this more, who lean more towards this ideology. Sometimes you'll often hear progressives. We hear the term blue states, states that more vote or lean this way. We know that the donkey is a symbol of the Democratic Party. We talked about the left side of that spectrum. We even hear now that term social democrat. We just had Bernie Sanders run as one of the major candidates for the Democratic Party as a social democrat. And there's definitely a lot more movement, definitely on the far left end of the spectrum of pulling more towards social democratic ideas. So if you believe that you should use the power of government to help the people, then what are some ways that you can use the government? Use the government to make sure the environment's clean. Pass regulations, laws to protect the environment. Pass laws that expand civil rights of the people, expand voting rights, expand rights of different people who are in minority groups. For example, if we look at the civil rights movement from the 1960s, in a lot of ways that has roots in liberalism. If we look at the any other major civil rights movement, whether it's the women's rights, immigrants' rights, sexual orientation rights, that many of these movements all have their roots in the liberal ideology. Typically, economically, they more lean towards labor, towards the workforce, and increasing, for example, the minimum wage, and cutting taxes on the poor and the middle class. And in order to pay for these regulations, in order to pay for programs that they want to use tax money for, like education, expanded health insurance, expanded benefits for the needy, they usually lean towards increasing taxes, in particular on the wealthiest. Their liberal argument is often that the wealthiest can benefit the most from our system, so they can afford to pay the most. We'll explore all of those and much more later on throughout the week, but that's kind of the core idea. Some famous Democrats. The last president, Barack Obama, was a Democrat. The current Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, the highest ranking member of the House of Representatives and third in line to the presidency, is a Democrat. Our governor of New Jersey, Phil Murphy, is also a Democrat. But if you want to really look at the kind of the founder of the modern Democratic Party, in a lot of ways, it's this guy right here who we spoke about at the end of last week, FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt, who with his New Deal really did a massive expansion of government programs during the Great Depression to try to help people out. And that idea that, once again, let's use the power of government, spend money, do all these things, borrow money, if it's going to go and serve the people and try to help them out. Let's now look on the other side. Let's look at the Republican Party and the conservative ideology. We often hear the term conservatives. The Tea Party is a movement that's often been associated with the Republican Party. You could also put up the Libertarian movement. Definitely has a lot of roots with conservatism. They're more right-wing on that spectrum. And when we talk about states that vote more Republican or conservatively, we're usually talking about the term red states. Typically, conservatives look at government not as the means of protecting the people's rights, but as a threat to the people's rights. And they believe that in order to protect the people, you need to limit the power of the government, to cut it back, to push it back, to roll back regulations that hurt businesses, to roll back interferences on common everyday people's lives. For example, they see regulations pushed by liberals to increase gun control, that's an infringement of people's rights, and this is the government overarching its power beyond the limits of the Constitution. Typically, conservatives want to try to keep the government as small as possible. And to that end, they're often economically more pro-business, looking out for businesses and trying to roll back regulations and cut taxes, often for benefiting the wealthy, but cutting taxes across the board for everybody, because they feel that the more money that the people have and the less money the government has, the better it is for our economy. That people should be allowed to keep more of the money, and that the government shouldn't be taking it and spending it on all these unnecessary programs. They want to cut those programs. So one area that you'll definitely see conservatives push for spending a good amount of money on is defense. They argue that the Constitution says that we will provide for the common defense. This is what we should be using the government to defend and protect us from foreign threats, from criminal threats. Not necessarily, to go and solve our problems with, the environment or education, all these other things. Leave it to the states and the local governments to work on figuring those things out. We don't need a big government solution. Another crux of the conservative ideology is favoring traditional values, often tied with religious belief. For example, resistance to allowing for same-sex marriage was a crux of the Republican Party and the conservative movement, because they felt that it was something that was in the face of attacking their religious beliefs. And also, they often now have been on the front of fighting for religious civil rights, of fighting for the rights for people to express their beliefs religiously and not get sued or prosecuted by the government for expressing their beliefs connected to their religion. Prominent Republicans of today, our current president, Donald John Trump, is a Republican. He is the 45th president of the United States and has definitely done a lot as president to push forward a conservative agenda of rolling back regulations in particular. That they feel the less laws that are in the way, the more that the American people and the American economy can grow. Another prominent Republican right now in our government is Mitch McConnell, who is the Senate Majority Leader. He is the one who sets the agenda for the Senate and has a great deal of influence. Now, in this history, this guy, Abraham Lincoln, was the first Republican president that was elected. The Republican Party is often referred to, and I should have put this on the AKA, as the GOP, which means the Grand Old Party. Although the Democratic Party is actually technically older, with Andrew Jackson as his first president, that GOP is kind of synonymous with the Republican Party. And the first president of the GOP was Honest Abe, Abraham Lincoln. But if you want to look at the kind of the godfather of the modern conservative movement, I would look at this president right here, Ronald Wilson Reagan, our 40th president of the United States. President Reagan's, very famously advocated for rolling back the government. One of his most famous quotes is, "Government isn't the solution to our problems. Government is our problem." And a lot of the ideals of the modern conservative movement definitely originate with President Reagan. So, what I'd like you to do for the question today is pick out one issue. It doesn't have to be one of the ones discussed, but one issue that divides liberals and conservatives that you're most interested in exploring and learning about. And I'll try to make sure that we cover it within our lessons. Even if I don't have a plan, if I see there's a lot of people that want to hear about this, I'll divert the plan so we can definitely make time for it. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. I look forward to reading your answers and looking forward to working on this unit. It's going to be a great way to finish out our 8th grade year. It's going to end with us doing one-on-one debates in the final weeks of school. I can't wait to see all the great work that you guys are going to do and to finish out a fabulous 8th grade year. I miss you all. I hope you all are good, and Have a great rest of your Monday.